Well,
also trust
we might have some more people.
Oh, I think Andy said she was going to make it, right?
Yeah,
Chloé Zhao going to join us.
Yes, not quite. But yeah, so we are officially live, guys, on the internets. This is the Eternals Roundtable redo. For those who were, oh wait, hold on a second. Now we have Mark.
Hey,
Mark. Hey. Yeah, so it's gonna be a nice little party tonight. This was supposed to happen on Monday. Folks who follow the channel know, but we had some severe internet outages mere minutes before we went live, or was supposed to go live, so we had to scuttle it. So we're gonna try this again. Everyone seems to have good, strong signals and lots of energy. I was gonna bring my entire pot of coffee, but I just settled for my giant mug. Actually, that was going. If I had hated the Eternals, my gimmick for tonight was I was just going to bring the entire carafe down and just and sip from that.
Wow.
But anyone who read my nearly 3,000 word review knows that I did not hate the Eternals. I felt quite the opposite. But I know that we're running the gamut here on the panel tonight.
There's some range here
of opinions. Yeah. Yes. So I'm very excited to talk about this. I do hope Annie shows up or someone else, because it's weird. It looks like we've got Icarus joining the panel.
Thanks for coming, Richard. How are you? Yeah.
He's there to stare down anyone who didn't like the Eternals.
He's looking right at Mark.
Yeah. Who let the MCU shill in here?
I know, right?
I was going to say he can spot the DC shill from a mile away. Yeah.
Well, of course, because he's Superman, remember?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You know, DC comics can exist in the Marvel universe. We found that out.
Well, they do. They do exist.
The forbidden door has been opened right there.
All right. Well, let's speaking of doors, let's open the floodgates. So I am joined. Well, I am, of course, Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. I am joined by David Foley of Keeping It Real, and Don Shanahan of 25 Years Later and Every Movie Has a Lesson, and the Cinephile Hissy Fit podcast, which did its own episode on the Eternals, which I have not listened to. I'm going to listen to it after we talk, because I want to kind of get everyone's arguments fresh. Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck from Special Mark Productions and the Spoiler Room podcast, and Mike Crowley of 25 Years Later, and you'll probably agree, check out all of their information down below in the description. Like, subscribe to them and to us, and all that good stuff. So, gentlemen, without further ado, The Eternals came out a week ago today in Thursday night previews, and a film that was much ballyhooed after its premiere like 3 weeks earlier. There's a lot of critical press and it's amazing and groundbreaking and different. It was different, all right. It was the first MCU film to go rotten on the old tomato meter, pre-release at least. And it didn't meet box office expectations, and it has divided the fandom pretty much squarely down the middle. I was not excited to see this movie at all, as has been well documented on a bunch of these shows. But as you know, shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, including myself. But I'm constantly amazed. I walked out loving this movie. So let's start off. Who wants to give the spoiler-free synopsis? And then we'll get into spoilers. Now, this is almost a 3-hour movie, so we could, the synopsis could take 3 hours. Don, you raised your hand.
Yeah. So the synopsis.
Wait. Let's do this. I want to get a synopsis from someone who didn't like the movie.
I'm kind of
and then from someone who did. No.
Okay.
Just go ahead, sir.
No, this is a social studies teacher's dream. You combine world history with comic books, and then comic books with world history, set in the era of thousands of years of occupation of 10 superpowered beings that are there to protect and also push forward the human race into what the best version they could be, purely to be harvested for possible celestial future beginnings of things and ends of things that we're not supposed to spoil right now. So what we've got here is a team of 10 multicultural casted people who represent very different kind of powers and in the future kind of cultural totems of what they can be for how the human race sees them. And they have their job is to keep the Earth and its human inhabitants safe from the deviants, which are just, your typical nondescript MCU monsters. But when they finally get rid of all the deviants, and they're right around the time of the fall of Tenochtitlan in Mexico, the group has a falling out because some of them are pretty, hardcore into the mission of doing what they're supposed to be doing to get this planet going. And some have kind of found themselves endeared to the human race and would like to kind of hang with them in their own respects. Among them are a bunch of, B-list and C-list actors that we'll talk about, but the linchpin in the
I
movie
like that you pointed to Mike and Mark with
Yeah,
that.
The cast is down there somewhere.
Good to know where we rank, Mike.
Out of here or something like that.
There's a reason we're at the bottom of these squares.
Right.
Yes, I know,
So let me point this way. Gemma Chan is easily the linchpin in the movie as the heart and soul, as the one who's the most closest to humans, but also at the same time is the kind of intermediary between the big mission too. Salma Hayek is your leader, and a bunch of other folks are in there along the way. And hijinks ensue because the deviants are back, and it's post-blip, Marvel universe. And what the heck can these people do? They have to bring the band back together to kind of fight to save whatever is going to happen to Earth. And then shit looks really pretty backlit by sunlight because that's Chloé Zhao.
Very good.
Yeah,
that sums it up. I think the lighting is part of the synopsis because the
Yeah.
visuals are a big part of this story.
I feel like all of us need our lights behind us right now. Like, just switching.
You got yours.
There we go. Yeah. Put
Yeah,
it behind me. There we go. Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
Now I'm Richard Men. Can I kiss people now? Can I have a
Sure.
soft love scene right now? No.
All right.
Okay.
Well, we're in the
Just
Midwest.
Just like Chloé Zhao, it took a very minimal amount of time to light it.
Yeah.
Well,
She
look,
just
I-
walks out. Yeah, we're good. Let's go.
It's beautiful. Start
Yeah,
filming. Yes.
Can we get up earlier tomorrow? And do
Yeah.
that?
That's how she sounds.
Here we go.
I was
I
going
don't
to say we should have done this
I know.
episode at 4:30 because we're in the
Yeah.
Midwest, and that's when it starts to get the
Right.
golden
Dark
hour.
now. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So Sajiwa is popping in with hello, people, and also
He
some
didn't say
kind of
it.
slow cinema Marvel movie. Yes. In
Some
fact,
kind of
I didn't say it. He did.
Fighting coming review. I see. Yeah.
but I agree, and this is one of the things that kind of underscored the introed my my written review, which you can read at kickseat.com.
I think you need to go first with the takes here.
Yeah, because Ian's gonna be he's gonna be that everyone's gonna love and agree with actually this time.
So start it off that way.
I don't know about that because like I said, the opinions are split on
I
this.
saw
but-
it yesterday.
There you go.
Like I think that the regular measured fans are positive, and then you get the crazy internet trolls who
yeah.
internet away.
I'll tell you, it was funny to be in Disney last weekend and all the different shops and World of Disney at Disney
Yeah.
Village, and see a whole section devoted to
Yeah.
Eternals, and I'm like, really? Who's gonna buy this?
Yeah.
Like royal fancy blue
Yeah.
gold like Letterman jacket, of course.
Oh
course,
yeah, to take the
Yeah.
movie man down there. So there's
Happy
the
Meal.
Don Lee action figures and plush dolls aren't flying off the shelf down there.
I didn't see any action figures, to be honest.
Okay.
I'm sure they're out there, but there was this really fancy satin jacket, and I'm like, oh sure, who's gonna wear that? Sure enough, a few moments later, as I'm walking down Disney Springs, somebody is wearing it, and she's
there you go.
she's enjoying it.
It was
So-
Chloé Zhao.
It was Chloé.
Could have been related to her, but
Right.
Let me ask you this, David, because you were in Disney World
Yeah, lucky.
during the
Yeah.
opening
Yeah.
weekend.
yeah.
Did you notice a decline in enthusiasm as between Friday and Sunday? Like the Eternals is out.
Were there any
The Eternals
executives
is
jumping
out.
out windows?
It's funny.
Okay.
It's funny. There is, at least in Hollywood studios, there was a lot of, at least initially when you walk in, there's a lot of promos for it. A lot of big banners and posters and stuff and everything. But, I highly doubt, probably 95, maybe little, I don't know, maybe like 90% of the people probably didn't even know that movie was coming out this weekend who were at
Probably.
Disney. I mean, these
Yeah.
are, it is the world's vacation spot. I mean, I met people from Argentina, from Ecuador, from, France. So it's, they're not really, if they're there, they're not really there for Eternals. They're there to spend their money on parks.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
But there is the after the parks close, you can go to the Cineplex. They have
That's
to
true.
have. Do they have this is gonna sound dumb, but do they have Cineplexes on campus there?
Well, they
Or
have a
to
place
travel
called,
to go.
they have a place called Disney Springs that you could take the bus to, and it's shops, entertainment, live entertainment, and a huge AMC movie theater. So, and of course, I walked past there, and there was a big, huge, banner for Eternals and everything. And yeah, I just,
Was
honestly,
Scorsese there? So G wants to know.
Shaking his finger at people in the. How dare you come here?
Oh, I will see you all. I will see you all in person in Chicago next year. Okay, good.
Yes.
Oh,
Details in
gotta
January. Yes, very big news from Sajiwa.
All right,
But
cool.
okay,
that's a long form teaser here. I need to check the clock on that one.
Disney Park for David.
All right, so my thoughts. Well, I've already kind of spoiled it, and what I'll do, speaking of which, for anyone who has not seen the Eternals, please tune out now because we are talking spoilers. But yeah, I loved this movie. I understand that there are, some people have problems with it. I don't necessarily agree with all of the criticisms, but I was kind of tainted going in because I had heard that it was boring, and I don't know if it is my year plus almost 2-year education in slow cinema, which yes includes things like finally appreciating Terrence Malick. Don, get off my back preemptively. That kind of opened. Oh no! Teacher wants to see me after class.
Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings.
Yeah. There you go. But we're a month too early for that. Don't you start, David. Target is bad enough.
Believe me, Disney's already started. Oh my god.
Oh god, is it Mariah Carey 20?
No. But everywhere, it was funny. It wasn't Friday in Hollywood Studios, but Saturday in Animal Kingdom and Sunday at Disney Village. All you heard was Christmas music, and I was like, "Oh,
too soon." Too soon.
All right, so
it'd be like George C. Scott. Turn it off!
Yeah.
If someone hasn't made one of those, that needs to go up on YouTube at some point.
There's a lot of them. Yeah.
But yeah, I was not. I don't know anything about the Eternals from the source material. I understand they changed a lot from Jack Kirby's comics, but I also kind of understand that because even less than the Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, or Iron Man 2008, nobody knows. Like if you know about the Eternals and if you're into the lore, you are breathing rarefied air in the realm of comics. So I feel like there was a lot of room to play. And I think the way that they played with these characters, I thought was very effective. I thought it was very imaginative and opened up a lot of possibilities. Yeah, I dug it. We can get into the details and stuff, and there's a lot to talk about with this movie. But yeah, I want to open up the floor to some of the contrary opinions, and also some of the it was okay opinions if we have any of those on the show.
Yeah, I'll go.
Don, you spoke up.
I did. I'm in the middle. I'm a 3 out of 5 guy.
That's still pretty good though.
Yeah, it's still pretty good. There's room in the MCU to do a slow cinema wannabe movie. There's room to make something more character driven and all that. And even I don't want to say romantic because this movie got billed for having Marvel's first sex scene. And let's be honest,
that's not a sex scene.
No, it's like
what the one on the beach.
Yeah.
That was definitely a sex scene.
There was a little grinding.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like soap opera.
There's more grinding in the Fast and Furious
Let's
movies.
talk about sex, baby.
Right. I've seen more skin on a soap opera TV show than that. Right?
Yeah.
Like Young and the Restless. But no, I was very middle because as good as it looks and as thick and as heady as it is, because other than just the characters who kind of talk about hey, where were you during Thanos, or just the anchors they put into the the current time of what they are. There's not a lot of there's not a previous MCU character who comes over to hold your hand and be like, oh, hey guys, come meet the Eternals.
Yeah. Right.
There's not a crutch. There's not Wong in here showing Shang-Chi what to do and fighting the Abomination in a club in wherever they are, Singapore, something like that. Yeah. So you got to come into this with your opening title call of In the Beginning. They're going. I'm not saying Conan music and Basil Polidorus showed up, but that would have been pretty cool.
Oh man,
so
that would have been awesome.
That would have been fucking awesome. Because just if there was a place where Marvel could kind of go to that level and make something mythic and mystical, this is probably that place.
Mm-hmm.
For what lowers it for me is this is a tremendous leap. This is a a big storytelling, and Michael will feel this because he hates the same guy. This is a Michael Bay level leap here, because you're, as much as we give Michael Bay shit for trashing Arthurian legend and dinosaur extinctions and Cybertron showing up in front of the entire world in orbit to do this and do that, like, this movie goes to places like that, and we just put our little doe eyes on and go, oh, look at Chloe and all those nice multiracial people go, you know. Whereas for Michael Bay, we're like, what the F are you doing to Arthurian legend? And like, it's just, you're jumping a hell of a lot of sharks. And it, now don't get me wrong, I get it. That's the source material. That's Kirby. That's the world creating. I can't even say world building. That's the world creating place that this stuff comes from. But that is an awfully big leap to make in an MCU. Now, don't get me wrong. I know we're on Thanos and we're on blips and we're on level 4 of, so to speak, in phases of jumping sharks already. But this is a huge jump that I don't know if was really that necessary. You know me, I've been on this show in our Marvel shows where I'm like, you know, I'm dreading the multiverse just because, like, you're doing too much for something that's a good thing. Like, you've been reasonably streamlined with your movies, you've built good characters and you've connected things together, and then you're gonna go put a celestial in the middle of the earth that's gonna just kind of erupt and destroy the whole planet, and these 10 figures are kind of there to stop that, maybe. And then, like, you know, one celestial floats above the earth enough to shake his finger at the celestials and go, I'll be back to fuck you up. And then all of Earth is going to see that in the same kind of, like, Cybertron hovering over Earth kind of moment in a Michael Bay movie, where if society should be just in holy shit shambles, not like, oh, so who are the Eternals? I can't wait to hear about them. That Richard Mann guy's cute. It's too big of a leap. Too big of a leap for me.
I hear what you're saying. I just don't quite understand the criticism, because, well, I mean, this is the first. I don't, given how this movie is faring, I don't know if we're going to get an Eternal sequel or if they're going to just show up, you know, in another, you know, MCU film, like part of something else.
We'll get another Eternals.
That's I mean, that's not,
that's the Eternals will return.
Well, yes, but that was
the same
also
thing about James Bond.
And Snakes on a Plane and Green Lantern. That's the thing, is everybody was talking about how big this movie was going to be up to a certain point, and then the box office came out and it's doing what it's doing. So a sequel is not guaranteed, but that's not to say that we won't see these characters in, you know, the next Avengers movie, either as a cameo or maybe there's a catalyst and they have to, you know, team up or something. But I mean, I feel like after the snap, after Thanos, you have to go bigger, because it's like, what else are you really going to do? You know,
you could stay right here on Earth. You know, you don't. Not everything has to top itself as galactic this and galactic that. Like, DC makes this same mistake too. Like, Batman is a street level hero. For Ben Affleck's first appearance in the DC EU is dealing with Superman and Doomsday. Are you kidding me? That's not Batman. You know, so DC does this too. And the X-Men movies have done this too, where they feel like they just have to keep topping themselves. Just tell a really good, grounded, in-place story. And the Eternals can do that until you have a fucking celestial emerging out of the earth to blow everybody up.
Well,
instead of a sky beam, you got a ground beam.
But in fairness,
part of the story.
I know a couple of things. One, when you're talking about you know, Batman and all that, you know, in the DCEU, you're talking about introducing that Bruce Wayne into that world. And as we've talked about, and I don't want to hurt any feelings here, Mark, but that was very clearly a case of DC trying to catch up to the 10 years, whatever, that Marvel had put into place. With Marvel, you've got 10 years and, you know, 20 plus movies of building, you know, starting at very much the ground level with, you know, Iron Man and building up to these galactic threats. Now you've gone galactic. You had space aliens coming down to Earth in the Avengers, and that was, you know, almost a decade ago. So and I agree that there needs to be some kind of an exploration of how regular human beings are reacting to all this phenomena that are happening. We get glimpses of it on the TV shows, but in terms of movies, because they are so expensive and they take so long to make, no one's going to want to go and see a street level, you know, Marvel movie after Avengers Endgame.
Like, That's the thing. They've overswelled. Like, and I'm not saying this is all going to go supernova and collapse, because the Marvel brand is so strong and the backing is there, and they can all, when the time comes, they have this beautiful briefcase called Fantastic Four and X-Men from Fox that they can break out and go, you know what, our little superfluous, big building multiverse thing isn't going so good. We went high. We aimed a little. I think we're going to jump the shark and overshoot the good thing they had going, because honestly, that first movie you kind of got after the blip was Spider-Man Far From Home. And I know you went to Italy and did the European Vacation movie, but you still brought it down to street level. You went back to a street level hero that still had a big enough threat that wasn't floating in the goddamn sky. So you were already making, and then you make these, but then you make these TV shows that have stayed very street level to kind of bring you back and show where characters have gone, and it's all been a nice calm place. And then, like I said, this is just a tremendous leap. I get it that that's the source, and I get it that that's Kirby. I just don't think you needed to go here. It's too big and too much.
Well, I would say if we're talking about Phase 4, which does encompass the television shows, this is what brings balance to what we've seen in Phase 4. As you mentioned, well, here's the thing. When I'm talking about balance, this is the big Marvel Comics, the cosmic big world shaking event. Whereas you start out with WandaVision, which literally was, took place in a captive suburb. Falcon the Winter Soldier, which jumped continents, right? And then Loki, which took place on another form of another plane of reality. So things are getting weirder and bigger as a progression.
But
so
you don't think you don't think Loki's big arc wasn't big enough? Like, you had to go bigger than Shattered Multiverse, TVA. Like, that wasn't big enough that you had to go here? I
don't. I think what I like about what Loki did and what the Eternals does is it really comes back to Marvel being the house of ideas, not just the house of visual spectacle. I love the moral dilemmas, the quandaries that the Eternals face in the middle of this movie, because they are divided. It is almost like a religious struggle. Do you go after the literal, the god-like beings that literally created you for a purpose and gave you this prophecy, for the lack of a better term? You're going to stay on the earth, you're going to fulfill this function, and one day you get to go home. Versus, I found out the truth. I saw the wizard behind the curtain, and I don't like this idea. We're going to try and save humanity. You mentioned the thing coming out of the earth. That doesn't happen. It is thwarted. And you mentioned Michael Bay. That is literally the plot of Transformers Last Night.
I know,
but I think that ticking time bomb, that dilemma, because I was actually wondering, how are they going to solve this? Because it wasn't clear to me that everything was going to be okay. I think it does wrap up a little too tidily at the end, given what you're saying as far as like the world would be in panic. But I also think that's a subject for a future movie, much like at the end of Avengers Endgame, we're like, well, how are people going to react to this? And you got a glimpse of that in Spider-Man Far From Home.
All right,
we've been talking. We've been. The peanut gallery needs a chance to talk. David, you are literally in the middle here. Open up.
With 10 characters, you're bound to at least have a couple that are kind of getting the short end of the stick. And I think that they're all pretty interesting characters overall. And you would think that for, a movie that's almost the size of Endgame, maybe a little longer than No Time to Die, you'd think that would be enough time. But again, it's 10 characters. And I think that a couple of them do get kind of like, short end of the stick. Overall, I did like the movie. Excuse me. And I think that I wish that some of the kind of the character subplots for Sprite and for Angelina Jolie's Thena would have been explored maybe later on. Because I think there's something really interesting going on there. The idea that this, Jolie's character, Thena, is this warrior who's kind of plagued by her past lives and these memories and stuff, call it, was it you that said it, Eternals Alzheimer's or something?
Yeah.
It seems like it's a little handy device to use because she is really all powerful and really capable and a warrior. and it kind of somewhat cripples her a little bit, paralyzes her mentally, until, you know, of course, the end. But I would have liked this, and I liked what was going on there, because there was this, you know, psychological ramifications of being around forever, which we saw in the old guard. I would have liked to maybe have had more time to expand on that, explore that. And also Sprite, you could tell, like, especially coming out of the Neil Gaiman book, you know, Sprite, spoiler alert, Sprite wound up kind of being the bad guy of that story, because, you know, Sprite always wanted to grow up, and, you know, she kept on being reborn as this preteen, you know, and never been able to grow up. And yeah, there's indications here that, you know, she's got a thing for Icarus and everything, Richard Madden's Icarus. But there's some really interesting things going on there that can't really be explored, because we have this overall plot to go through. And I only mentioned those two things just because it would have been cool to just, those are some really good ideas, and it really would have been cool to, like, delve into those a little bit more. I understand that they were touched on and why, but I feel like those are two very interesting things that could have been, you know, explored a little bit more. But, you know, it's not a series, it's not episodic, you know. There's no way that this movie could have been, I mean, it could have been 3 hours, but there's no way they would have let it be 3 hours, just because, hey, you can't release a movie where you're already releasing a movie where, you know, the majority of MCU fans do not know any of these characters, and I would guarantee that most of them did not see The Rider or Nomadland.
No way.
So it's not like, you know, they're like, you know, Chloé Zhao, you know, loyal devotees, you know. I am, and so I was really interested to see what she would do with this. I almost wish that, you know, visually and tonally, Zhao would have been given a little bit more agency, I guess. Yes, you know, you could compare it to Malik and everything and all that, but I like the kind of like contemplative moments in the movie, and I like the kind of like real world settings. You know, apart from the deviant beasts and everything, and that everything seems like very lived in and a real place, not like, you know, CGI or green screen or blue screen. It doesn't really feel like a whole lot of that, except for obviously the fights with the deviants. But
yeah,
you know, as far as locations, like it felt like it was shot in real locations, which I do believe it was. But so yeah, I mean, it to me, in my mind, it may be the best looking MCU movie. You know, there's some beautiful things going on there, but it's not going to be the best, but it is going to be probably the most different.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, I think different is good. Now, my fear is that the Disney Marvel execs are going to look at the results of this and the press and the reviews and be like, okay, we got to go back to big dumb action, more, you know, planet smashing Thanos. Let's bring Hulk back and probably Iron Man and who knows what, because that's what the people want. We've stepped too far out of the box, which I think is exactly the wrong lesson. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I David, I think I understand your concern there too. I got about as much as I need out of the Sprite, you know, character and even Thena. I think sidelining Thena was really a strong move, because you almost are given this Captain Marvel problem where you've got this OP character that can show up and do anything to like kick anybody's butt. So you got to kind of like, oh, she's out doing, you know, she's solving crimes in deep space. That's why she couldn't help out until the end of Endgame.
And she's your biggest name in the cast too. Like you're tabling Angelina Jolie too.
But that's, you know, that's a criticism I've heard too. It's like, yeah, she's a marquee actress, but you know, you're putting her, you know, in a smaller role. I don't think she would have a problem with that, because she had to have read the script before she signed up. Yes, that's what I'm getting at here. Yeah. But I think, I'm wondering if there's a director's cut of this out. I would definitely watch that. I could have watched another hour. I could have watched the sequel to this movie, right away.
Yeah.
But also, if they had in mind other movies, I would imagine that there's going to be, or would have been, balance to the focus of the ensemble, because not all the Eternals that are in the beginning of this movie are at the end, leaving room for more character development. And because there's so much of a flashback structure to this narrative, I would almost guarantee that a lot of that sequel might involve bringing back some of those other characters and seeing how they interacted with the remaining Eternals throughout time and filling in some of those character dynamics you were talking about, David.
Yeah.
So, Mark.
Actually, go to Mike. I want to hear Mike's.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, Mike's hard.
Yeah.
I want to hear Mike's.
Is he? No, I'm not. I did not need to go there. But what do I say? I'm not sure what movie everybody saw.
Yeah, I know.
It was Eternals.
I know.
Disney Marvel.
The thing is that I didn't see this slow, methodical picture. I just kind of saw a generic comic book film about a bunch of people who had to kill evil blue demon monsters, and they were going to end the world. And then there was a whole ton of exposition in the middle that I had trouble following, either because I'm dumb or it was boring or both. And then when it finally got to the third act, it was the usual kind of CGI laser fest sort of thing. And I get the meaning behind it, that they didn't know if they should defend humanity or not. I never really felt the emotion of that throughout the whole, because like a social studies class, it's not very interesting when it could be more interesting. And when I'm watching this and I'm watching these world events unfold, the only one that really made me feel anything was when Gilgamesh, Goo, was
Wow.
sitting amongst the wreckage of Hiroshima.
That was Fastos.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, it was
Brian Tyree Henry. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Well, whatever. I'm racist. But
you are now. Welcome.
They did it on a live stream too. That's great.
Yeah.
But when Fastos is saying, well, as you can see, this is how much of an impact the film left on me. So when Fastos is crying over Hiroshima, that's great. But the rest of it, I'm just going,
that's great.
Okay, I get what this movie's saying, but I don't care. Like, the kid doesn't ever grow up. I felt bad for her. That's great. But then there's like 10 more scenes of her crying about it. And now I'm like, all right, we don't need to keep beating a dead horse with a stick here. So the movie just felt, I don't want to use, all right, it felt a little pretentious when it could have maybe been a little more genuine. So.
Well, but I guess pretentious is an interesting word. What did you think was not genuine about the story?
Well, first off, Angelina Jolie's accent.
True.
I mean, she has maybe 2 minutes of speaking time in the entire 2 hours and 38 minutes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, was that really a sticking point?
It was just immediately, I'm just getting, as we wrote in the comments earlier, like I was just getting reminded that she was doing her performance from Alexander again. It's like, wait, you guys from all around the world, you can have whatever accent you want. Why don't you just use your normal accent? Scottish Sebastian Stan is. Why isn't she?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Scottish Sebastian Stan. That's hilarious.
Yeah. And so outside of that, like I'm just like, okay, they're making a very complicated story about a bunch of people who have to kill another thing that's going to end the world. So all the drama in between and why they're struggling with their morality and, should I live in the middle of the woods because of that? Like, I was like, are they just writing it because it's in the script? I don't know. I just felt absolutely nothing in it. And that's why it didn't seem genuine to me.
I know. I'm trying. I'm going to say this as delicately as I can. I don't know if you're being fair to the movie. I mean, you've already said that you didn't understand large portions of the middle. It sounded like you weren't connected to anything. I would almost ask you to watch it again, which I doubt you'll do, and reevaluate. It didn't sound like you got.
I would watch it again and reevaluate.
Okay.
Because that's why I'm listening to what everyone has to say. But to me, if it's not something that not only I wasn't into, but a lot of other Marvel people who are like really into the comics, who aren't like, guys who go on the internet and
Like us.
drop hate on everything. Well, worse than us,
Yeah.
They sort of had similar feelings, and I make little funny nicknames for everyone, but I couldn't help it. I was looking at that guy; he looks exactly like Sebastian Stan, which, if I pull up his name here, is Richard Madden.
Richard Madden.
Yeah,
my daughter loves him. He's in Cinderella.
Well,
but it's a curious, and I am kind of sticking up for this movie, and I'm not a Marvel shill, paid or otherwise, but I wonder how much of this was colored by the pre-release hype, not only in terms of like what I think was the awful marketing of Disney focusing on the diversity of the cast rather than what the movie is about. It, as I wrote in my review, it feels like on a certain level they knew they were doing something that was so out there that they had to draw, like they had to have something to advertise this with. So like, hey, it's the most diverse cast we've ever had, and it's the most different movie we've ever done. Right. As opposed to here's what the movie's about, and it's really cool. I do understand sort of the catch-22 there, because there's so much of this movie that is spoilery in what it's really about that you can't really get into that in the trailers, because the villain of the piece doesn't really manifest until about halfway through, and it's not the demon dogs. They're almost in the same way that the Skrulls in Captain Marvel were, classically they're the comic book villains, but they kind of shifted in focus. They turned out to be like space refugees. It's sort of the same thing with the Deviants. They are these savage beasts, but they were sort of programmed that way, along with the Eternals, to be the people that patrol them, to have this conflict. The hatred breeds the essence of the Celestials, which I think is, this kind of, what is that? What am I looking at, David?
You're looking at Dane Whitman.
It's Magneto. No.
Well, I want to get to that end, that post credits scene in a little bit, because I thought that was pretty spectacular. And I think what it meant possibly for the story that we were watching was pretty spectacular. But before we do that, I realize I kind of cut myself off midpoint, but I've been rambling enough tonight. I want to get to some comments from Sajua before we find out what Mark thought of the Eternals. I'm sorry, just Eternals. It's not the Eternals. I made that mistake before.
I have as well.
Different Marvels for different people. This one is for Malik fans. Sounds like have not seen it yet, but we'll do so soon. Fine with spoilers. Okay, well, I'm glad you're fine with spoilers, because you're in the wrong place if you're not. And when will they add laser cats as the big villains in Marvel?
Good question.
You're the same one with the tentacles, I think.
Yeah.
I would totally watch an Avengers versus laser cats movie. Mark.
Yes.
Butthole cut,
Laser
please.
sharks.
Yes, release the butthole cut of the
laser cats. Yeah,
the laser cats.
The Chloé Zhao butthole.
What a segue, Mark. Good luck.
That's a great segue, because I just like to say it's great to see Marvel finally borrow from the DCEU for some of their elements that they put in their film.
All right,
and I say that positively because I love the DC film. I love all the comic book films in some way, shape. Some of them better than others, but I enjoy them all. Okay, but DC films have been getting slammed, and rightfully so, for some of the quick, dense, jump the shark, move through the idea too quickly type of thing, because they want to catch up. And that's what I felt with the Eternals. I had no problem with everything what you pointed out for it, Ian. I had no criticisms in it. This film is highly dense, and you made it a great point. People who aren't familiar with Eternals, I wasn't. I got done with this and I was like, that was great. We went past about a dozen great ideas at lightning speed that I would have loved to see fleshed out more, that we never actually get to stay with long enough, because we have 10 characters, new villain, more world building to build. So me not being familiar at all with any of that, I mean, I picked up the Eternals Forever comic. That did too. It was supposed to kind of prepare you. That did nothing outside of the names of the people, because I'm like, those deviants aren't even like the ones in the book. I'm like, what?
I didn't
You
even
know.
I didn't realize it was a one shot. I thought it was
Yeah.
like the beginning of a mini series.
No.
Like, that's it. What is this?
It was written like a one shot because everybody mentions everybody else's names like immediately. Oh, Icarus. Oh, so you know who that person.
Hey,
was.
Cersei. Hey, Makari. How's it going? Yeah.
I enjoyed a lot of things of it. I love the historical aspect. My problem was this film was so dense. I didn't get enough time to enjoy it like a third of our audience who were Marvel fans, who knew the Eternals, and I knew they knew the Eternals because you get to the mid-credit sequence and about a third of the audience went, "Oh!" and the rest of us went,
those were just Harry Styles fans. That
Okay.
had nothing to do with
no, it wasn't just Harry Styles
Where's Annie
fans.
Banks when we need her? Yeah.
Boy,
No,
me and my daughter, holy cow, we went nuts.
Yeah, and that's great. I'm not slamming anybody who I'm glad a lot of people really got into it, but it's so dense. My buddy and I came out of it and we go, there were so many ideas. I would have loved to see this be a limited series to where we would have gotten some time to spend with these characters and with this world. And then you do the celestial thing, because for a novice guy she said she got some influences from Man of Steel, I think it was, or whatever. That's in here. I'm watching this film. I felt like I was watching more of it, not completely, but more of a DCU film, to where it's very compact. It blows through a lot of ideas that if you're not familiar with, you're going, okay, that's cool. But the whole Angelina Jolie angle with her, I loved that. I loved that idea. I loved the fact that one of them became a Bollywood star. I love, but all of those we get because they have so much ground to cover with 10 characters. You don't get a whole lot of time to really, I didn't feel like I got just enough. Okay, great, of who they were. But a few of those people, spoilers, folks, don't make it to the end. But when they died, I didn't quite have that emotional impact. All I was thinking was like, oh, great, now they're outnumbered. Because as some of them were dying, I was like, oh, great, now they're outnumbered, more so than feeling the impact.
So you're saying they're eternal, not immortal.
Yes,
that's right.
Exactly.
They don't need to be charged.
I mean, that's one thing I will give to the film's credit is that I didn't feel overwhelmed by all the information and all the characters, and I think it did a good job balancing them. My only problem was I wanted to see more. I wasn't exactly overwhelmed by what they were giving me.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting enough because I was into these characters. I loved these characters. I don't know these characters. So when he makes the comparison to Icarus being Superman, I totally felt like he was a ripoff of Superman, specifically because that's about all we get to see. And then he turns into, the guy from The Boys. He felt like he took that turn. But for me, it was like a few of these characters I connected. Where the linchpin was, I actually didn't feel a lot of connection with her story, with her and her love interest with Icarus. There wasn't a whole lot of chemistry. That's why when we get to that sex scene, it was awkward because I hadn't felt that connection to their connection. Felt forced. Let's put it that way. The way they presented these characters, it felt more manufactured for me watching it.
But what if that was like the fourth episode of a miniseries where you've had 3 episodes of them pining and getting closer and closer, and then all of a sudden there you go, Right. This would suit. You're going through enough time that this would. I'm with Mark. This would easily be a great miniseries because you could spend some time in the history. You can have a Bollywood episode that's longer than 5 minutes. That kind of thing.
I mean, I think there's a reason why they didn't have great chemistry, because when you first see them all, awaken, they're basically aliens, and they're alien to each other, and they're alien to their environment, and so. Cersei and Icarus are kind of like Adam and Eve in a way. It's just like, okay, we're gonna have sex. I mean, are they in love? I mean, as far as what they know to be love, sure. It just feels like they are kind of like the first man and first woman of their creation. So Why not
I
have
think-
sex?
They've been
They're-
having sex longer than everyone else has been having sex. They've been doing it for 3,000 years.
Well, but
They
here's the
didn't look
thing.
good at it. That's all
You'd-
I'm saying.
you'd think
Like,
they
I mean,
know the magic
no, you
slipper
gotta
trick.
get more
at least some
believable.
Kama Sutra shit going in there. Come on.
Here's-
it's got to be slow and methodical, and
Backlit. Yeah. I know.
Well,
Yeah.
here's
Magic
the
flipper
thing.
trick.
For those who are going to watch this movie again, for the purposes of trying to like figure out, what's the big deal, I would go into it with the mindset of these are characters who have been around for 7,000 years on Earth, who and we only get glimpses of their adventures that take place over the course of. These aren't just like flashbacks to 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It
Mhm.
goes from like 7,000 years ago when they arrive to like
Right.
3,500 years. So when you're saying they don't have chemistry, we get maybe one or two of those flashbacks in which several hundred years have elapsed
Mhm.
from that 1st sex scene on the beach,
Mhm.
which was
Yeah.
a few thousand years after they first met. And also they are being influenced by humanity during this course. They are
Right.
waking
Sure.
up as these vessels with a job to do, but they spend time with people. They get to know people. These aren't the ones who created life on Earth. They're very much living among them and watching culture develop and flourish. So I mean, I think the wedding scene between Cersei and Icarus was kind of a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. If this movie had been told linearly and not so much in the Tarantino mold, I mean, it is pretty linear in the fact that the flashbacks are told linearly. They're just
right.
they are dispersed throughout. We're jumping from present day
Yeah.
to 5,000 years ago,
Mhm.
present day to 700 years ago, whatever. It does get kind of jumble up and hard to keep track sometimes. But that's the thing. I don't think that anything was rushed or glossed over in terms of relationships. I mean, you look at some of the earlier MCU movies when Thor shows up, on Earth and he meets, Jane Foster. They're like lovey-dovey by the end of the movie. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah,
Wow,
they
when
spend
you-
they spend like
When
they
you
spend a
look
couple of
like
days.
Chris Hemsworth. Yeah.
Right, but they spent like less than a week together, and they're already jumping into the sack.
But like, if you're like, in terms of like chemistry and sweep in a time-spanning movie, give me Highlander before give me this movie. That's got sweep and romance more than this one.
Yeah,
Give me the
I
Outlander
watched.
TV show,
We watched
anything
Highlander
like that.
recently, Mark, and
Yeah.
I think Don, I would go back and watch the first Highlander.
Okay.
There is romance in it, but it's not. It very much is
No,
this is
yeah.
the woman who's going to get killed by my mortal enemy. It's not a grand
Stakes.
sweeping
Thank
passionate
you.
thing.
The other stuff
she
that Marvel
gets
doesn't
bridged.
use. I know. Yeah.
I mean, I would compare this to, like I did already. I would compare this to
Oh,
Old
okay.
Guard,
I'll take Old
just
Guard, too.
because Old Guard, they definitely take it's less characters. It's more time to
Right.
feel the weight of being alive forever.
That's how I felt watching Old Guard, honestly. Sorry, go ahead, David.
Okay, but
I was
I,
feeling the weight of being alive forever.
but I think like here it's obviously a lot more epic, and you're dealing with, it would have been cool in Old Guard if they would have gone back in time, and like they do in the Old Guard comics, is they go back in time and they look at how they lived and what they experienced. Here, Chloé Zhao does that, and her 3 other writers. It is ambitious to do such a thing, and like I said before, with this amount of characters, you're bound to kind of feel like there could have been more going on here, or it would have been nice to, like I said, delve into more things here. But I think as far as what they introduce and how the story eventually supports what they introduce, I was, pretty impressed. They, like when they said, "Oh, the deviants. This isn't like a deviant we've ever encountered before. He's healing himself." Well, we find out later in a flashback why they're healing themselves. So I'm glad that they touched on that, and they could have just like totally overseen that, or never touched on that, and I feel like the writers definitely did, deliberately plan out, okay, if we're going to mention this, we got to support it later on. And they did. And I think they did a good job with that.
Yeah, and I think again, I feel like this is the gateway to, future movies. Mark, I think you're not the only one on the panel who mentioned the word dense. There is a lot of information and stuff thrown at you here, but you could also say the same thing. It's like a headier version of what Marvel does in every movie. They drop Easter eggs. There'll be something hanging in the background of an office, or there'll be someone like spitting out a line of dialogue, like Stephen Strange is just like a name that they drop in, the second Captain America movie. Whereas this is planting, Easter eggs for stuff that may play out, several films down the road if they ever get them. And your mileage may vary, but yeah, I didn't have trouble keeping up with any of it. I was invested in all of it.
Well, but you've hit right on the problem that I had with, and I know some people on the panel here loved it. Mad props to you guys. I wish I could see this film, even after watching WandaVision, Age of Ultron, the same way. Okay, you take an epic film, you've got 10 characters you're introducing, you're expanding your world even further with Celestials, which I found amazing. I loved all that. It didn't bother me that the big Celestial showed up at the end, because at this point, people are like, fuck it, whatever. Pardon my French, but they're like, we got snapped and we came back. They've seen Thanos battle. They're like, okay, there's a big finger in the sky. Whoop-de-doo, pass me a beer. That type of stuff. But they also are using it to set up other things. So not only are we being introduced to new characters, and again, it's not the information, it's that I wanted to see more of the stuff they touched on, but they give you just enough of these things to move the story along that were interesting, that we probably won't ever come back to again. Because they did a lot
of the movie, though.
They did a lot of setup, though, for the next. We are even with the end credits. I had no freaking clue who the Black Knight was, so I didn't know what the big important deal was with the. I knew the name. That was about it. I didn't know the big thing with the sword. Also, I didn't know whose voice that was. In all honesty, I thought it was Kang's voice at the end with it at first, until I read up 3 different articles that said, oh my God, it's Blade, and they're setting up the phase 4.
Watcher.
And I'm sitting here going, I would have rathered, and again, I enjoyed the Eternals. I give it 3.5. I think it's visual. I love the visuals. I love the story. I saw potential here to where I could have loved it more had they either had, scaled it down just a bit as far as the mileage they go with it, or made this a limited series, because this is another one of those to where, yes, even if you're not too familiar with the material, you enjoy the film, great enough, but it really is made for Marvel fans who are familiar with it to really get into the film, because these characters enough to where you don't need to spend a whole lot of time with them, like the guy who could control people's brains. I forgot his name, but Druid. There's a whole 40-minute episode at least of just him and the implications of him controlling an audience in the middle of the Amazon. There's a whole story with him. There's even a whole story with, our other character dealing with Hiroshima and the technology he has leaked out. There's a whole episode just with that character, a whole episode watching Angelina, Jolie with I loved our speedster. We get her trapped, living by herself solo for however many centuries in the ship. And then we see her kick major ass with Icarus, which was awesome. I wanted to know more of her character, though, and see more explored to her, and we don't get that. So
10 characters, 10 episodes makes sense to me.
But here's the thing, though. There's a few things I would counter to that. One, I mean, there's so much packed into this already that if you were, you're going to have a movie about the Eternals. I mean, that's just on the map, so you have to, kind of choose your bullets, right? But and you could have a limited series about all of these characters, but as I mentioned, they leave room in sequels to explore these ideas. You get enough. Everybody gets a moment or two to shine in this movie. Now, whether or not you're satisfied with that, I mean, that's just a matter of personal taste. But each character in this movie has something to do, and they are important to the story.
But
no, hold on a second.
Right, go ahead.
The other thing is, as with all of these movies, what they should be doing is presenting a story that's adapted from the Marvel comics or the DC comics and inspiring you to say, I want to know more about these characters. I don't need Chloé Zhao to spell it out for me on the screen. I'm going to go to my comic shop, and if I want to learn more about these characters, I can go read the books. It's kind of like a great documentary. It doesn't just stop after the hour and 40-minute runtime. You can go and find out, read the volumes that have been written. A good documentary should be an introduction and not, the end point. And the other thing is, what about imagination? I came out of there wondering, oh my God, what was the deal with Fastos and Hiroshima? I started writing stories in my head about what that could have meant. Same thing with Thena. Same thing with why Makari was spending all that time in the ship. I mean, it's not always up to the filmmakers to fill in the blanks of what you didn't get out of an actual running time.
No, but that is the responsibility of the world builder, and that's the Kevin Feige and the whole Disney blueprint we've been doing, where I'm with Mark here. If you do a 10 episode limited series, you give each character a fat episode to kind of get, you do all the past and history stuff, and then you kind of touch on the end of the episode, kind of where they are in the present. And then everything in this movie that is 2021, well, I guess this is the MCU post-blip, 2025 set. Like, if you put all the present day, we got to bring the band back together and deal with all of our crap, because there's the big thing coming and the Celestials are done, and then your mid-movie cliffhanger is Selma Hayek's death and all that stuff like that. Like, if only the present day stuff was in this movie in a nice, tidy 100 minutes, and all the past stuff was all super duper built for you by a great limited series where you've got 10 episodes to be like, man, that was a great character. Can't wait to see what they do next. I want to go dig in some comics. You can get so much more mileage and meaningful mileage that route, and that would be a nice new thing for Marvel to do, is do the backstory stuff for 10 episodes and then go hit a big home run with a 2-hour movie of The Thing. Oh my gosh, it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Instead of all of it in one, super condensed and picky and choosy.
Right. I would have rather had a series with Eternals than What If.
Hell yes. Me too.
I'm going to say it right now.
True. However, I will say, I don't think that Disney Marvel is going to build or would have built a 10 episode series of Eternals, because it is not very well connected to the MCU. You're not going to, no one is going to sit and say, oh my God, I get to watch an hour with Druig and the Amazons.
You just watch Loki with Loki.
But Loki had over a decade worth of, Tom Hiddleston showing up in different movies it was very much connected to everything else going on in the MCU.
Right. But the minute the people heard that they were going to do Eternals, your MCU fan base exploded like, oh my God, on the internet. This is awesome. They're covering the Eternals. So you have a fan base. That's the whole thing. MCU, they've got the fan base already that will watch it. Okay. You say, I'm doing a 10 episode or even 8 episode miniseries of Eternals. You're going to get people to watch it. You're going to get people who don't know the Eternals who are watching it to get familiar with them and finish with the big movie. I get what you're saying, Ian, but just for me, coming out of the film, again, I didn't hate it. I did feel like I watched more of a DC movie because of the same problems that it ran into for myself, was that, they tried to do too much in too little bit of a time while also setting up things. So for me, it felt like a very long movie that they set up things that I get you want to go research, but the film fan in me goes, I had the same problem though with like the Star Wars movies as well. Some of them is like some of the characters that they had in like the prequels and that people were going gaga for. I was more of a movie fan. I guess for me as a film watcher, I don't feel like I should have to have supplemental material to go along with my movie. Well, but I mean, that comes down to interpretation. I don't. The thing is, I'm not saying that I needed anything else coming out of the Eternals. I'm saying that is a way you can approach it. I felt that I got everything I needed from this movie, and including, characters I want to learn more about. But if there's never another Eternals movie, I can go back to this and say, wow, that's really interesting. I wonder what would happen, sort of what if. There are no grand questions here that I left the movie saying, this doesn't make any sense. That was stupid. I don't know why they introduced this. I got everything that the movie was trying to say. And I didn't have that. And I have an imagination as well. Thanks for accusing me of not having an imagination, Ian. No.
But I'm just trying to get where you're coming from with this.
Where I'm coming from is, I'm all for dropping Easter eggs, but when I go to a film, again, it's the same problem I had with Age of Ultron. I have this problem even with Halloween Kills. I'm throwing it out there. I had this problem with Halloween Kills is that for me, for my taste, when I watch a film, sure, it should be a sequel, but it should still be enough self-contained story to where I came out of it not feeling like I'm really missing out. And I've had some MCU films and some other films to where I'm like, this was a setup film. And yeah, that's great that they can do stuff down the road, but it felt to me, I want that story. So even like when you got the Spider-Man films, those are deeply connected to the MCU, yet Spider-Man at least gets a story. The story itself, for me to enjoy everything about it, I don't necessarily need the supplemental material for that to understand the meaning of it. In this one, I just felt like I was missing out. And unfortunately, when you go to the comic book store, I went to 2 different ones in 2 different cities and go, hey, do you have comics that could help prepare me for the Eternals? And each one of them said, well, the movies are quite different from the comics, so I don't really have an issue of the Eternals that'll help you connect to the movie because it's going to be different than what's in the comics.
A bad comic
Well, but
book owner.
that's a bad answer.
Which I
though.
understand. I'm just
it's
saying,
Wisconsin for you.
I'm just
That's
basing
somebody who
it-
doesn't
I'm
want to
just-
sell their books.
I know, right?
I'm just basing it on
Get
what
that
I've
guy a
been
stack. You know?
what I've been told. I'm not saying this is a bad film, but I'm saying even with, like I said, Halloween Kill, I don't want to go to see a movie, even if I know there's more. I don't want to see a movie to where it's just setting me up for the future films. You know, no crying. Thank you.
Well, here's the other thing. The toothpaste is out of the tube already of what Marvel's been doing. Like we just got we just got 3 TV series of setup of like toothpaste out of the tube, and now you want us to squish one of those into a 3-hour movie, 2-hour 45 minute.
That's hard
movie?
to do.
It
is
to do.
That was a difficulty. Is like I think I would have cared a lot more for these characters that they told their story. And it's like, oh, by the way, here's the comic that goes even more into their story from this episode. And here, I think it was just bouncing around too much, and that's why I was like, "Am I missing something? Am
I would think again, Mike, I think you are missing something because it does jump back and forth, but this is a tight screenplay. Everything connects, everything wraps up.
True.
Yeah.
Tis.
Well, okay, so tell me what are some of the loose tissues that I can help
all
thread
the
back
holes,
together?
all the well, I'm gonna get to the no crying too, but no, the looseness here is what Mark and I are talking about. The assumptions you have to make. Now, I'm not saying you have to go exposition crazy and spoon feed everything. We've talked about that on this dais many times, where too many movies go exposition crazy. But the fact that we're sitting here going, gosh, that should matter more, or gosh, why didn't that hit a little harder, or gosh, why am I feel like I'm forgetting the importance of this character, or is there a next gear of what this character can hit, or another little bit of time just to flesh something out? Those are deficiencies in tightness and holes to me. Like,
well, but that's also subjective because
I
you're
know,
saying that, but I'm saying I didn't have
alone
any
either,
problems.
though. But yeah, like you know.
I think the only argument of film is we see something different, and
that's what I love with film.
Just I saw a story that certainly had its ambition, but it felt very flat. And maybe if it was told through a longer series, it would be better. I think its overall style doesn't quite match the costumes and the setting, because you get this natural cinematography, and then when you're watching everyone wear these costumes, they look like they're wearing something that was like fan-made or something. And that's another point of contention I had there. I'm just not sure if this was quite the correct vision to go.
And at the place they chose to do it. Like, that's the other thing for me is, like, I know Spider-Man's coming, and I know Doctor Strange is coming, and Loki has set up what we've got set up with Kang and big things coming. That's where I'm back at with this leap. Like, this is a big thing to do in a weird perfunctory middle place. I don't know. Now we could look back on this and go, wow, look at what they've done. That was a bedrock to future things. But if this doesn't pan out, I'm going to do what I'm doing now. I'm going to look back at this movie and go, that's just a lost thing that they did for 2.5 hours.
This is going to sound weird,
Yeah.
And you guys, here's my film credit card. That's fine.
Ooh.
I almost wish they hadn't added as much trying to give each character the own quirk that they did, like the relationship in that. I almost wish I would have just got, here's your speedster, here's your person who can change matter, here's your person who can do the mind control thing.
Mhm.
Stay, the flashbacks for where they met, okay, I get it, but like, okay, here we've got the badass who has, like you said, Eternal's Alzheimer's. That's all I needed. I didn't necessarily need to know when she had it. For me, I think I would have enjoyed it more. And it sounds bad because I do love character exploration in that. But I think if it would have just stayed with, here are your basic beats, and not actually tried to go a little more complicated, I may have I probably would have enjoyed this a little more. And
Are
the
you
only
talking like Ridley Scott Prometheus, just stay ambiguous, like
no,
shit's this big and going down and it means this and the big thing of things?
I guess what I'm saying is the origins you give them where they're actually robots. That's awesome. That's what I would love. And the fact that they have each one of these powers and they're getting the band back together to fight this big monster. That's all I really needed. By adding the other little elements, yeah, it started my imagination, but the problem is that's an interesting idea. Let's go with it. Oh, it's already gone. And my mind's starting to work on that, but we're being presented with something else. And granted, I know that's not necessarily the fault of the film, but I think had they not tried to because we've had 11 years now of superhero films. We don't necessarily need to get all the depth for 10 characters right away. You can do the stuff like you're talking about, Ian, in sequels or if they show up later or whatnot. But by adding those other elements, now you're adding a whole nother branch of story that you never really come back to.
I'm with you. Imagine this movie with only the present stuff and no flashbacks.
But then it really does become Michael Bay's Transformers. You got the robot that looks like this. He transforms into the car, and this one transforms into the plane. We've had, like you mentioned, Mark, 11 years of these superpowered characters. One runs fast, one blows up stuff with his eyes. We've seen all of that. So where do you go? You go back to ideas to move forward, I think.
But if it's get the band back together and you see their dynamics flesh out along the way without the laborious social studies lessons.
But again, that's a matter of opinion. I don't think any of it was laborious. And when you're talking about subjectivity and everything, what I was trying to get at with I mentioned it was a tight script, and you guys kind of laughed, and I was like, okay, so tell me what I can help connect with you. Don, you said you had trouble like remembering stuff or holding on to things. Again, that's not necessarily. It's not a knock on you. It's not anything boosting myself up or the screenplay. It's just like I can't help if you can't keep up with what's going on. At a certain point, that doesn't speak to a loose thread.
No. But you can
necessarily you could watch the movie again and be like, oh, now that I've seen this already, I can go back through it and be like, oh, that was connecting to this, and getting back to the whole like, time jumping around.
I don't feel like I missed anything yet. At the same time, here's all these things I can point and go, that's not connected.
But I asked you for examples, and you jumped right to that. I'm back to where Mark and I are at. Either fully flesh out some history or you leave it out. To do both, it tips scales in weird ways where that's the looseness. We're wobbling in places where, do I want to explain myself enough? I'm not saying we have to be a Christopher Nolan movie here, but like, am I explaining my past enough, or am I explaining my present enough? I can't half-ass both, and that's where I see looseness instead of tautness. Because and here's the other thing: any 2 hour and 40-minute movie does not have tautness. I'm sorry, get the fuck out of here with that. No, you can skip that. Even the whole the I call it the ground beam, since we're going there. Even that whole battle. Do we need 3 different times that Icarus gets away and has to get tied down one more time? Do we need 2 more little kid sprite moments of, am I going to involve myself or not? And then let's just leave Kamal Nanjiani in the sidelines just for fun. My contract ran out and I had to go make my next movie. Who knows? So it's just, there's almost like Dune. I'm not saying there's entire 15-minute chunks you trim out, but you trim a minute here, you trim a minute there, and things just get tighter.
It's a collection of those kinds of things, because I felt like you're half-assing it by packing it all together. Either you spend quality time on the past, quality time in the present, not half of both.
Well, again,
In
we're getting back to
superfluous amount of time.
subjectivity. I don't think that they
I'm
half-assed
measuring with
anything
a
here.
goddamn stopwatch, and it's not subjective.
Right. Well, hold on. Before we get to David, because you've been giving some great blue steel looks in watching us talk. But okay.
Yeah, no, I got the look from him that I'm just totally way off base.
Yeah,
I got it. I got that look from
I got the
David.
look
I
too.
know.
All right.
I got it.
Not my first time.
I'm catching up on some comments here. So Sujiwa says maybe it should have been 11 films. We kind of talked about that, the miniseries idea. This set moved me closer to watching the movie. Good work, team. Oh, so maybe I am a Marvel shill. Maybe I'm doing the work of
I'll
Mr.
connect you to a
Feige.
man named William
You know,
Johnson.
Here's the thing. I'd watch the film again.
I would too.
I'm not. I mean, I've been critical, but
It is much better than Tenet.
Hell yes,
it is much
better.
but I definitely want to hear David's be able to shoot us down even more with those laser eyes of his. No,
We'll call him Icarus.
You call
Icarus
him
Valley.
Icarus. I just want to add that I'm being critical. I'm just mentioning the things that didn't hit for me. I understand responsibility in that, a filmmaker, but for where this film is, it's a little awkward. I think maybe if it was a little bit earlier or something, or it different or later, because this is a cosmic event. And my question is, you got a big freaking hand coming out of the ground. You've got earthquakes around the world. You got Big Head coming out of the water. Where's the rest of our superheroes? You've got a planet full that you brought back with your snap. And this is the problem I have with any combined universe, either DC or Marvel. You're having an epic moment like this, and this is where more street level stories work, in that, they're not going to go bother with just this offshoot. I got my own area. But when you've got a global event and nobody from any of our superheroes shows up, and just the Eternals, I would have been the Eternals going.
Here's the thing.
I will answer that. For all we know, the next 4 movies, for TBD, for all we know, the next 4 movies, we'll all talk about the dude's head in the hand in the seat. And if they do, great, because then they didn't leave it live.
Because on the other side of the world, his foot came out, so that could have been a story too.
True, you're right. That's true.
Come on now.
But no, here's the thing. There's a very simple answer to where were all the heroes, and the answer was taken care of at the end of Endgame and throughout the beginning of Phase 4. Iron Man is dead. Captain America is retired. Falcon and Winter Soldier are off, doing, getting themselves together. Loki's off in another dimension. Wanda and Vision are probably still fighting through, whatever they're going through the suburbs.
Still not Hulk.
Right. And Thor is off in space, and Black Widow's dead. So, and on top of that, the climax of this film, with everything coming up out of the that takes place movie time, almost in real time. So by the time you find out, oh my God, there's something going on in the middle, like on this beach in the middle of Malaysia, where the hell they are. Right. Or they're like, oh my God, how do we get there? What's happening? Are there earthquakes that are happening right where I am that I need to save people? I mean, the one knock I might give to this movie, but I'm not quite willing to go there because I don't know exactly what's going to happen in the aftermath of Eternals. They do flash forward a certain amount of time to show what happens with Sprite, and things look pretty well put together. But this could be, I don't know if that's 3 months later, if it's supposed to be the next day or whatever. The world is dealing with what happened, with the non-birth of the Celestial. It's just at the end of this Eternals movie and not the focus of it. So much like with the way Spider-Man Far From Home answered a lot of questions that we had at the end of Endgame, like, what does this mean for the world? We may find that out soon. It's just that unless you wanted to go another 40 minutes at the end of this movie to deal with the global politics and what does CNN have to say about the this rock that apparently is sticking out of the earth. Right.
I could give Marvel patience credit, because when the Chitauri thing happened in Avengers, that was easily talked about in several other places. Like the Vulture got his tech from there, and it was always revisited in Rebuilding New York, and we've had a post-blip Marvel where Shang-Chi talks about the 5 years, and and it shows up obviously in our television series, is where I will give credit and patience that this won't just sit here and lie there, but We'll see. You know,
Kevin Feige has this
and-
giant serial killer board with all the strings going everywhere, and I almost guarantee this is
Either
a
that-
new board
either
with
that or
this
he-
at the center.
Either that or he's Steve Buscemi with a name of people to kill and lipstick
Yeah.
and a sniper rifle. So one
Or
of the
Kevin
two is
Feige's
correct.
looking up all the negative reviews and making names.
Right.
Oh yeah, he's gonna have Thanos' brother show up at the beginning of the next movie and snap Eternals out of existence. David, because we could talk about this all night, but I want to keep you here all night. I do want to talk about the Kit Harington thing in the
Yes.
post-credit sequence.
please.
Before that, David, I want to get jump in here with some thoughts.
Well, supposedly, yeah. So it was a very interesting Game of Thrones reunion because you had Richard Madden
Yes.
and Kit Harington,
Yep.
and the same composer.
Yep.
Ron,
Yeah.
Dawandji,
Yeah, Ramondi. What's his name? Ramondi.
Ramon Dawandji, yeah.
There
yeah.
you go. Thanks.
Easy for you to
Um,
say.
Iron Man, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you know.
I think that it is going to play out. They are going to mention Eternals, eventually.
Mhm.
There was Eternals. Black Knight. I was introduced to him in the 80s. He was an Avenger. Cersei for
You
a
can
while.
just call him.
was an
By the way, you can just call him Knight. I'm never gonna let that joke go.
Oh, boy.
Oh, God.
Oh,
Falcon,
okay,
the
gotcha.
Falcon,
Gotcha.
the Winter Soldier
Yeah,
joke.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Call back.
but,
Deep cuts, guys.
Dane Whitman. Cersei was an Avenger, and at the time they were on the same roster. So it's interesting the way they're, you might say that, oh, why wedge in Dane Whitman when, he was part of Avengers lineup for a while in the 80s and early 90s. Why wedge him into an Eternals movie? Well, Cersei was at one point an Avenger, and they had kind of a thing. So, it makes sense, even if you're not a deep cut Marvel fan. So, I to be honest, I like what they did with the Eternals a lot better than I think the DCEU did with Diana Prince, or Diana, because at least you show. You could have, honestly, you could have done this approach with Wonder Woman because she's been around forever, right? Okay,
Mhm.
something like that, and it would have been interesting to see, what she's been doing all this time,
Right.
and
Yep.
and
Training
even
on an
it's-
island.
yeah, and
Hanging
it's
out in
funny.
80s malls.
And it's funny because Cersei is basically like taking up the same kind of job position
Mhm.
as Diana. I
Mhm.
thought that was kind of funny. But also she has a colleague, a friend, a love interest in Dane Whitman. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, you could easily say that with the end credit scene in Shang-Chi could eventually become an Avenger. Dane Whitman can become Black Knight and become an Avenger. I didn't like towards the end, like how he. What was that? It reminded me of something. Oh, it reminded me of Rise of Skywalker when Finn really wanted to tell Rey something, and they never got around to saying
Yeah,
it.
I got around.
Yeah.
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 So it's like Dane
Oh,
Whitman
boy.
really wanted to tell her, about my lineage. And it's like,
Yeah.
it made me wonder, like, did he know all along, or did something
Well,
happen?
this is what I wanted. This is what I want to get into, and this
Yeah.
is
Okay.
this is the thing that I loved because it sort of and we're not gonna. Yeah, it's an Easter egg for it's a seed that's planted for a future movie.
Sure.
That's really. I think I wouldn't have liked it so much if it had not also been the post credits scene.
Yeah.
Because it
Mhm.
it set up that whatever he was babbling about, like, I just found out something about my family or something like that, or, something about his lineage. And then at the very end, the post credits, he's like in this room and there's a sword like wrapped in cloth or something. And then you hear Blade, I was with you, Mark. I didn't know what the hell was going on until I looked at the internet later. And it
First
turns
thought
out
it
it was
was Jeffrey
Mashallah
Wright's
Ali
voice.
saying, well,
Mhm.
but it was Mahershala Ali saying,
Right.
do you really want to do that,
Are
Mr.
you
Whitman,
ready
or
for
something like
this?
that?
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
ready for this, right? But what I loved about that is when you see his character at the beginning of the movie where he's just Cersei's boyfriend, like college professor or whatever, and she shows up late to class and they're just kind of lovey-dovey and like, I'll see you later tonight, and they're just kind of dating, and then the ex-boyfriend comes back into the scene, and that's when you realize she's a superhero and all this stuff. He very much is the doe-eyed kind of like everyman, like, oh my God, I'm dating a superhero, or what's been going on here. He seems genuinely kind of clueless and lost as to this whole world. Now, granted, he lives in the same world as Avengers, so it's, there's probably help groups for that. But when he pops up at the end of the movie, that exchange on the phone is so bizarre with him like asking all these questions that it made me realize, is there a parallel movie going on where maybe Blade shows up like somewhere in this other story that's going on to teach him about his destiny? And so when he calls his girlfriend saying, anything, I'm just finding out some weird stuff about my family, do you know anything about like whatever? And then it at the end credit sequence, I feel like, and Marvel has done this before, where they'll show an end credit scene that is from like a movie or two in the future, or that's going to be important to a development that's several moves removed from what we know. I feel like that was the impression I got, that it wasn't, I don't get the feeling that his character knew all along that there was something going on with his lineage or whatever. I feel like this was the movie that was going on parallel to what we saw in the Eternals, and that's why I really dug it.
Yeah, I was a little frustrated by that, just because I was like, wait, okay. I mean, I knew what his heritage was and everything, but okay. And it was funny too, because the ebony blade, his sword, that wasn't the first time we saw it. We saw it earlier in the movie when I think one of the Eternals was holding it, and she held it up and she's like, "This is that the ebony blade? Yeah, Excalibur." And so how he came to hold it, how he came to have it was curious for me.
And that's I think the true the import of this, the way it's presented in this post-credit scene, because when we see the blade in the box, it's wrapped up.
Right.
It's not, we don't see it the same way that we saw it earlier in the film. So it's another deep cut for people who would understand what they're looking at. For other people, they're probably like, okay, why is this important? It's like the Howard the Duck thing that Mark mentioned earlier. There are some people who got it and some people who didn't. But again, you're like, I don't understand at all what's going on. So there's gonna be some people who get it. Some people are just like, that was random. And other people are gonna be like, why is this important? Who is Dane Whitman? Is he a Marvel Comics character? Oh my God. And they're going to go back and at least Wikipedia it and maybe go read some comics. And it's not to say that that's a mark of bad storytelling, that you have to go read the comics to understand. You could either wait until it's explained in the Black Knight solo film or the next Avengers movie or whatever, or you can again go out and expand your horizon with some gold comics. Yeah, you keep showing that action figure,
but but you know the crowd though nowadays. Like they're gonna like the fact that we now know it's Mahershala Ali, so fast as we knew it. Like the internet will spoil anything before a comic will even get bought.
Google will spoil it. Google spoils exactly who shows up at the end credit sequence. If you Google Eternals, he's the second guy credited with arrows. And if you've seen the trailer,
but what I'm saying is that Marvel, the way that they presented that post-credit sequence, they presented it as if Google was not a thing. If they wanted to have it really be on the nose, they would have had the voice off screen, and then they would have cut to Mahershala Ali in full Blade regalia, looking exactly like Wesley Snipes from '98, going, oh, I get it, it's Blade. There's vampires now.
That would have been way cooler.
That would have been actually.
It would have been cooler. It would have been like comic blockbustery. Okay, I get it. There's Blade, but there is some kind of a mystery there. Again,
that would have been funny. That would have been funny if, like Samuel Jackson at the end of Iron Man or whatever. I'm getting a team together. If it would have been like camera goes to Blade, I'm getting a team together. You want to join me? It's like, what?
That's the exception. I take it back. If they had done that, that would have been hilarious.
What if they opened up the multiverse between this Blade and the other Blade and totally undercut this Blade?
They could. A lot of people are like, bring Wesley Snipes back. Well, he's really old, but we might see him again.
But anyway, so the same primer is probably needed for Star Fox as well. So for most folks who are like, all right, Harry Styles is hot, but who the hell is that?
Star Fox?
Well, also, is he going to get some acting lessons between now and the next movie? Because I thought he had a great look, but I thought when he opened his mouth, I'm like, God damn, like I love the British accent, but I know he's a Brit, but he sounds like someone trying to do a really bad British accent. He's so understated. He might as well be, made of paper and, being read in a comic shop. But anyway,
go ahead.
I
Mike.
kind of geeked out. It was fun.
And like I said, a third of the audience geeked out, like they knew who it was. They called his name before he even, they said it. Yeah. And that was awesome. I'm mad props to them. I do not hold that against the movie, because that's where we're at now. My only issue is, for me as a moviegoer, and maybe it's just the old man in me or whatnot, I guess I feel like when Howard the Duck showed up, it's a gimmick, because he wasn't going to be a major player in the integral part. Here, Eros, this guy shows up with his sidekick, and okay, this is a big character. I should know why he means something, but he shows up and I'm like, okay. When he showed up, a third of the audience was like, yes, all right, yeah. And I was just like, huh? When Howard the Duck showed up, it's a great in joke, like a badumch, at the end for everybody. But Eros is going to play a major part, because the way they set this guy up and his look and everything, okay, he's another Eternal. He's going to be a major part.
It's the same thing with Adam Warlock at the end of Guardians
it's
of
the
the
same thing
Galaxy
with
too,
Adam
right?
the Warlock. Again, I'm not holding it against it. It's just that after we've been introduced with all the other characters that just introduced in Eternals, to get just another new character. I mean, why not? Sure. At one point when the little satyr guy popped out, I was just like, why not? At this point,
Mark, that's
who deserves to be in a Marvel movie, by the way.
No,
98% of the post credits and stingers in Marvel movies is to set up characters that we haven't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what they do.
And I get that, but those other films weren't quite as dense with other new introductory things that we've already been trying to wrap our heads around. To get one more, for me, I guess it lost a little, but it was the same. I felt the same way when they showed 3 seconds, when the one big stinger for an end credit sequence was Thanos go, I guess I'll have to do it myself. And he grabs the glove and walks off. It's like 5 seconds. And I was like, okay. And then again, like half the audience was like, yeah. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Now he's got the glove. Yeah. We knew that was coming, because the internet was exploding about him and the Infinity Wars coming up. And this is for a larger discussion of where it seems like now films, especially Disney, really give two craps about hiding too many things, because they know the demographic, which is not old white guy, are just going to try to search out everything they can about the film before it's made. That's just the demographic. That's the way it is now.
Yep.
And now they've tossed it out. We even get that in the horror scene, where I'm the big fan of Blumhouse. That's why they show like this long sequence of Michael Myers just laying waste to a bunch of firefighters, which would have been a great sequence, because Blumhouse has said, well, to keep up with streaming, we've got to show as much of the movie as possible to get people in the studio.
Well, I would disagree with that in the case of the Eternals specifically, because as I mentioned, the marketing does not give away the fact that Icarus, turns heel. I was actually thrown, and there was a moment of emotional disconnect with me, mostly because I thought the film was messing with me. When Ajak, the Salma Hayek character, when she dies, early on in the film, I thought it was a trick, or there was something going on with the time, because I knew from the trailers that was one of the big ways to introduce this. I think it was in the second trailer, because everyone was like, well, why weren't they hanging around? Why didn't they intervene when Thanos was snapping at everybody? The trailer that came out after that teaser was the scene with Ajak and Icarus sitting on that porch, and she's like talking about Thanos and all this other stuff. So I was waiting. That scene hadn't happened yet in the movie. So I'm like, is she really dead? Is this a fake out? Like, what's going on? No, she's really dead. It's just the marketing reminded me, oh, there's still a scene coming up, or maybe it was like a cut scene or something.
Right. Now you know why I didn't watch trailers, man.
Right. And I got confused when she died. They kept saying Ajak. I'm like, who's Ajak? And then they were going back and forth in time. And then when they're talking to Selma Hayek again,
she was the person they mentioned in the opening. She
What?
was
Oh,
the
she's
character
alive.
they
There's a
mentioned
flashback.
in the opening crawl. They talked about the leader of the Eternals, Mike.
Wasn't much of a crawl.
Again,
He's
it's
an
a,
early childhood special education.
it's a solid film. It's one of the films.
crying.
It's one of the films that is going to be like, as I mentioned earlier, a few of the others that we've had come out to where we just have to be patient, and we'll look back on this after the other films and we expand further to where we'll probably look at it in a different light. It's just
I'm there too.
for me, it's the naivety of me, I guess, the old school in me. I go to a film, I kind of look for more of a more contained, give me this story, maybe with a little nuggets to lead to a new story, but give me this story so when I leave at the end, I feel all right, that was a great story, but we've got elements here to where we can take things further. Kit Harington showing up is not going to play a sub character love interest. He's going to be a big character. I didn't know about the Dark Knight.
Well, look at Angelina Jolie.
She kills one of the main bad she's still a badass. She still gets one of the bigger parts in the film where she gets take out one of the final mutant guys, remnants. So, when you see Kit Harington, I was just waiting for that shoe to drop going, okay, who is he going to play? And then when the Blade showed up, I'm like, okay, I knew the name Dark Knight, the Black Knight. I knew the name, but that's about it. I'm like, okay, and then, yes, I did go look things up more. And on one hand, that is an interesting, great gimmick to get you pulled into the comics. On the other hand, the movie guy in me, it's just like with the TV shows that I was worried about with MCU. To enjoy the film, I don't feel like you necessarily should need supplemental material to really appreciate what's going on. You should be able to present me with enough. And I guess I didn't get that with me. So it felt a little awkward with the Eternals. I still enjoyed it because it felt like a DC film. So yeah, I said it. So I did enjoy it on that angle for sure. But I guess for me, I just didn't go gaga over it like some people because it didn't hit, and it will later probably. But I still think it's a solid movie to see. I don't think it deserves the rotten rating. I don't think it deserves a lot of the criticism. I think the criticism is misplaced because you are getting a different formula Marvel film to the point of, what did you do to my formula?
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to end it here because we've been going for an hour and a half almost, which I really appreciate you guys hanging in there and having a robust discussion. I think more people are going to watch this than watch that. No, 4. Yes,
that was my fault. My bad.
No,
I got Eternals characters. See, I got them. See,
dude, I got.
I thought that was
the one guy looks like
he's
he's not taking part in No Nut November. Looks like
not at the table, Carlos.
Nice. How do you get them to light up, Mark? Do they light up?
There's a light on the bottom, and you take your flashlight from your smartphone.
Oh, and it shines through. Yeah,
it shines through the bottom. My wife actually discovered it. She's like, "Oh, this is what she found it on the bottom." She's like, "Oh, look, I guess I can put it here." And then let's see if I can get his eyes.
Kind of badass. Actually,
his eye, and then the other one is
his little ball.
His chest plate lights up.
That's right, because we watched the Captain Planet movie. Yeah.
But
all right, well, I'm gonna close things out here, guys. But before we do, for the folks who joined us live and are watching this in the future, Earth's Mightiest Critics will be back in a mere matter of weeks, talking again Disney Marvel, because the train never stops. Disney Plus is going to be airing Hawkeye, brand new series, and so we're going to be back here talking about it. And let me see if I can get this.
We got the image
sharing thing done. I don't know if I can. Oh, how does this work?
I'm a Haley.
That's how you do it. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
You put.
I'm a Haley Steinfeld.
I
can't wait for Hawkeye because
I'm. Let's see. Hold on.
Perfect logo right there. Command Shift 3.
That's pretty good right there.
I gotta work on my.
Oh, look! Now we're all gone. There it is.
Talk.
He's coming for you.
Talk. Can we talk? Hawk talk.
Fluffy talk.
Yes, we shall.
Check it out.
I'm
3
getting my
weeks,
clip.
bro.
I'll give you a topic.
Fuck talk. I'm on YouTube channel. Remember to like and subscribe.
I'll give you
Yes,
a topic. An arrow
do all
doesn't
that,
have
yeah.
arrow or sit in a row. Discuss.
There will be
Are
hawks
you guys
and
aware
coffee.
of what's happening tomorrow?
Friday.
No.
Disney Plus Day. You heard
Disney
about it?
Plus Day. They're dropping a bunch of
Yeah.
nuggets tomorrow.
What? Like
Well,
what?
yeah. So,
like announcements
so
or
shows?
Shang-Chi
Yeah.
and Jungle Cruise are automatically going to be dropped on Disney Plus. You know,
Non-movie.
Yay.
fine with
Nice.
you, but there's also going to be like throughout the
Home
day
Sweet Home
on
Alone.
Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I think starting at 9 a.m. Eastern, there's going to be like a huge like Marvel preview, probably some Star Wars stuff. Yeah, just kind of pay attention. There's a Marvel Studios special will debut at 11:45 Eastern. A new Pixar special will premiere at 11 a.m. Eastern. So it's basically commemorating 2 years of Disney Plus.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
considering how the investor call went yesterday, I don't know how much commemorating they're going to want to do. So
Yeah,
hopefully this
the
drums up some
haircuts.
business.
Yep.
Oh, they
It's-
got to get those trailers out fast now.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's weird to think. I don't know what their business model is, but they're saying that they only gained 2 million subscribers last quarter, and that's considered a flop. So I'm like,
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
weird. But
Yeah, I wish I
we'll
had
talk.
2 million viewers on my site.
I know. Cool, right?
I'd settle for
can't
2.
come out soon enough. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody. I'm not going to do the roster because everybody needs to get to bed. You can find
We're all
all of
there.
everyone's information down below. Please like, subscribe to all their stuff. Like this video and subscribe to this channel if you like what we're doing here. And join us back November 24th. That's the Wednesday of Thanksgiving for back-to-back Hawk Talk, because I think they're dropping the first 2 episodes on us.
Hawk talk.
Yeah, that'll be good. And also be sure and pick up your Matt Fraction graphic novel. You could like knock someone over the head with this as homework. That's what I'm knee deep in that.
Is
now,
that
so.
the very specific homework, or is there another one that we should do?
There's a couple of
That's-
stories in there, right? Or is it just all Fraction and
It's all Fraction. This thing is like
Cool.
hundreds of
Good
pages
Lord.
Oh
long.
gosh.
Yeah.
there's
No,
some
it
great
just came out
stories
like-
there.
Yeah, it came out like 2 weeks ago, I think. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's why. Okay.
you might be able to find it in the library, Don.
Okay.
You've
or,
got the
you know,
copy
request
right
it.
there because we always fight over the copies of stuff.
I got like
That's
3
true.
comic
In the
stores
Chicago area.
all over the place.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, very much. This has been our epic review of Eternals. I appreciate it. Everybody out there, have a great night. Love comics, love movies, and all that good stuff. And
Oh,
Excelsior!
Yeah.
Oh, my celestial
Excelsior.